Yo, what's up everybody, FornaTRON here, and today we're going to be going into my personal review of Lords of the Fallen 2023. Is it any good? Let's get into it. You're probably wondering what my credentials are. Well, I have platinumed every single Soulsborne game that FromSoftware has released. I even platinumed the Demon Souls remake. I platinumed Elden Ring on the PS4 version and the PS5 version and the PC version. I'm working on the platinum for Armored Core 6 on PC, and I've played the PS4 version and the PS5 version. And I got the PS3 Demon Souls platinum. Here's the two different Elden Ring platinums that I got, the PS4 version and the PS5 version. And I even platinumed the OG vanilla PS3 version of Dark Souls, and I'm working on the PS3 version of Dark Souls 2. So yeah.
How do you like them apples?
And before we get into this review, is to show you I did beat this game. I played it for almost 20 hours. And if we look at my achievements, you can clearly see that I have beaten the game. So with that being said, let's get into it. For the story, I give it a 12 out of 20. You could tell CI and Hexworks spent a huge chunk of their budget on the opening cinematic in Lords of the Fallen. This definitely reminds me of Dark Souls 2, where the cinematic was far better than the actual game could ever be, which is 100% the same for Lords of the Fallen. This game is not the cinematic. They probably spent a pretty penny on licensing that Danzig song for the original trailer, which is also part of the opening cinematic. The cutscenes are oddly paced and with bad editing, and sometimes just end abruptly. The voice acting sounds like it was written and performed by ChatGPT.
Even as our suffering continued, I honored my pledge of patience to the exactor.
Very dull and lifeless performances, and sometimes just awkward. I feel like they only paid the one voice actor who does Exactor Dunmire, and that character is barely in the game. The story takes place 1,000 years after the 2014 game, and yet is not a sequel, but it is a very generic, you're the lamp bearer and you're gonna be the one who's gonna save the lands type story, etc. Not very creative, but it is serviceable. Graphics, give it a 15 out of 20. The character models in Lords of the Fallen are bland and generic and lack a real identity. Some NPCs just look misplaced compared to the rest. The enemy models are painfully generic and dull and have little variety. You can absolutely tell that Hexworks and CI put most of their effort in the visual presentation of the environments, but it is an Unreal Engine 5 game and environments look great in most Unreal Engine games. The special effects are serviceable. Nothing really wowed me or made me think that was like insane, just either blue umbral effects or gold yellow faith effects. The animations in this game are hilariously bad. Just look at your character's running animation. Most animations in this game look unnatural or like they've been sped up 2 times. Soundtrack, 12 out of 15. This game has some amazing scores. The first fight with Pieta is epic. The soundtrack had a hint of John Williams to it, so it's kind of Star Wars-y, but you still can't deny some of the scores were great. Gameplay, 17 out of 35. This is where the game falls apart. This is where most Souls-likes fall apart. Lords of the Fallen has an opening cinematic that is optional to watch, and the time to gameplay is very good, which I appreciated. The movement in this game is sloppy. Your character rolls like 6 feet in front of you, no matter the equip load, and the roll has always looked kind of funny to me. Here's a comparison to Dark Souls 3. You can clearly see how much further your character leaps forward in Lords of the Fallen. It makes distancing during fights much more difficult to get used to, and over positions your character. Some people have said use the sidestep when locked on, but I feel like that's a lazy excuse for how bad the roll is in this game. Also, the distance in which you lunge forward when pressing R1 or R2, so your basic light attacks or heavy attacks, is way over exaggerated. It makes combat feel slippery and made positioning a really big chore. Another huge gripe that I have with every single Unreal Engine Souls-like is the enemy hit tracking. Enemies have perfect hit tracking, and they will unnaturally spin and hit you even if you're strafing them. See this example where the enemy does a full 180 and hits me because it has perfect hit tracking. Comparison to Dark Souls 3, where the enemies have to commit to a hit. So if they wind up for a big hit, they only have so much turn radius before they have to land the hit. I thought the umbral mechanic was going to be optional if you wanted to explore that realm, like maybe find hidden loot or just like a cool new direction that you can go. It is 100% not optional, and you must use it in lots of places. Any mechanic that you are forced to use as a player against world elements or bosses, enemies, etc., I am 100% against. Imagine if Elden Ring had a boss and you had to use Torrent or you'd instantly die. How lame would that be? It just made me feel like the Umbral mechanic was a gimmick that they had to force into the game to seem useful. The enemy variety and quality is very poor in Lords of the Fallen. This game packed in every enemy it had in the first few areas. I'm willing to bet it's because if they spaced them out for each area, there would be almost no variety in enemies. Enemy placement is also way too abundant, and also placing ambushes literally around every corner got super old super fast. Plus, almost every boss you face, you know will be a regular mob enemy in the next area. The bosses were bad in this game. They have laughably generic designs and have clear inspirations to Souls bosses, but kinda just look like the "we have Dark Souls at home" versions. For example, the Sundered Monarch is clearly inspired by Father Ariandel in Dark Souls 3, but its bug eyes made me laugh out loud.
What the hell?
This is why art direction matters. The best boss in the game legit is the very first one you fight, which is Pieta. The rest of the bosses are painfully lackluster and boring. Another huge complaint I have is with level design. This game has amazing looking environments, but the level design is terrible. Too often I was running around lost or in circles because I didn't know where to go next. The world has an optional approach, but it fails at being open world, and it also fails at having a clear direction of where the player should go next. The game does have some replayability with different build types and different endings, but after one playthrough of the game, I felt like if I never played Lords of the Fallen ever again, I'd be okay with that. Technical, 7 out of 10. This game ran like trash on my gaming PC, and I have pretty decent specs. I have a 12th gen i7 with an RTX 3080, 32 gigs of RAM, and an M2 SSD. I had lots of weird bugs and glitches, and my game crashed a few times. The game runs terrible on console, which is unacceptable in my opinion. The game set the stage right off the bat. As soon as the first cutscene ended and the camera panned down to my character, the game crashed right away. So I knew what I was in for going into it. Hexworks and CI have been releasing patches almost daily, which is all you can really ask for. I hope they fix a lot of these issues with the game and make it better, but I'm not going to hold my breath. So far, all they've managed to do is nerf how strong throwables are. Overall, 63 out of 100. Barely an okay game. They spent all their focus in the wrong areas, learned few mistakes they made with their 2014 game, frustrating gameplay, and disappointing bosses that nice visuals just don't make up for. Another great example of what if you made a Souls game with no art direction and completely prioritizing visuals over gameplay. I'd pick this game up if it was 50% off or more, maybe.
No.